Hey guys, Brad Gilmore here. Want to give a big shout out to our title sponsor, Walker Texas Lawyer. If you or a loved one have been injured in an accident, whether that be a car, truck, motorcycle accident, or some kind of other issue, hit up Walker Texas Lawyer at 713-552-1117 or walkertexaslawyer.com.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Matthew McConaughey.
Brad Gilmore.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how are we doing?
I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Jessica Alba and Lizzie Mathis. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Kevin Costner joins us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leno joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Chris Tucker is in the building. Chris Tucker, good morning to you.
Hey, Brad, and good morning to you. How are you?
George Lopez joins us right now. George, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What lovely to talk to me. Funny lad.
Megan Trainor.
Thank you so much, Brad. You're awesome.
Chloe Bailey joins us. I appreciate the time.
Appreciate you.
And more. This is The Collection. Now your host, The Boat.
Brad Gilmore! Well, Dogma returns to theaters after 25 years of greatness, and people like me enjoying this movie on DVD. We can go see it on the big screen again, and the man himself, the man behind the movie, the writer, the director, the everything from the View Askewniverse, Mr. Kevin Smith joins us this morning. Kevin, how are you, sir?
Good morning. So damn good. Cannot believe I've lived long enough to see Dogma reach a milestone, a quarter-century milestone. Nuts.
You know, this movie, and I mean this honestly, I've seen all your films. This is my favorite of your movies. It's always been my favorite. I remember having to scour the internet to find the DVD copy of it at one point because it was hard to get. Now this movie's back. It's going to be in theaters. People can finally see it again in the big screen. This has to be just such a rewarding time for you right now.
It's nuts, man. Like the movie's been out of commission for quite some time. It was made by Miramax, which was owned by Disney back in the day. And at one point, Disney was like, get rid of this movie. And so I got to say the name out loud, so brace yourselves. Harvey Weinstein personally owned the movie for the last, ever since 1999. So roughly the last 25 years. And for the 10th anniversary, the 15th, 20th, I couldn't get the movie out from under him and stuff. He had some legal problems. So fairly recently, Alessandra Williams, who's our savior, the guardian angel of Dogma, she bought the movie away from him, and she approached me, be like, hey man, what would you like to do with it? And I was like, I would tour it like I toured Clerks 3 and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot and stuff like that. And she goes, would you just put it in the theaters normally? I said, I don't think anyone's interested in that sort of thing. And yet on June 5th, on Thursday, we come out on like 1,500 screens. So we went to Cannes with the movie. That was nuts. Just got back last Sunday for the second time. We went in 1999 with Dogma. Then we went back this year for the Cannes Classics section. So I went from like 15, 20 years of no Dogma to nothing but Dogma for the last month. I was on tour, 20 cities across the U.S. Every night we did like 2 shows, Q&As after. So I've been steeped in Dogma, and I'm delighted to watch it play at this stage in the game because it reminds me of the kid who made the movie. The kid who made that movie wrote it and directed it, believed in everything that was on display up there. And I don't have those same beliefs anymore. Now I got, good ideas, so to speak. But every night I get to watch that flick and revisit the kid for whom his Catholicism, his childhood Catholicism, meant so much that he grew up and made a movie about it.
Well, I mean, isn't that where it started? Like when you were in film school, you wrote a script called God, I believe, and you had the Rufus scene in there. That was kind of your entry point, and then it metamorphosized into what we saw initially. But when did you think, because like Clerks, obviously great, Mallrats is amazing too. Mallrats actually made me want to write a screenplay. And then you go into
that's the highest compliment you could give a filmmaker, man, is that their work made you want to do a thing.
Well, what I love most about all your movies, and Dogma, and I'm going to ask you specifically about a certain scene, but the dialogue is so great. Even Ben Affleck did an interview, I think, with Vanity Fair, where he talks about there's a rhythm to Kevin Smith dialogue, and you're so about the written word that's in the script, and you can feel that, and it translates. So my question is, when you're making those first three movies, Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy, and you have this God script or this Dogma idea in the back of your head, it, to me, in some ways, feels like a departure from the smallness of the first three movies to now, boom, we're going all the way. We're bringing theology in here. We're bringing, Jesus, God. We're going to have a toilet Tyrannosaurus pop out of nowhere and be in this movie. Feels big. Did you feel like, since it was your fourth movie, that was when you had the confidence to do something this big?
It wasn't so much the confidence. At that point, I was never going to have a better chance to realize my juice, for lack of a better description. I was, Clerks put us on the map in a big, bad way. Mallrats hurt us because the movie tanked. It became a cult classic, but when it came out, it did not help one iota. So Chasing Amy was like a Hail Mary to stay in the business. And it worked out. People critically liked it. It was doing good, strong business for a movie that cost $250,000. It was making $12 million. So that helped. Suddenly, I was back and getting respected and whatnot. And so when people were like, what's next? I was able to be like, oh, we want to make this movie Dogma that I've held on to for a bunch of years. So also in the wake of Chasing Amy was Good Will Hunting, which went even further toward securing a pretty decent budget for that movie. It was a $10 million movie. We probably could have used 20, but we still made it work for $10 million. And Ben and Matt being in Good Will Hunting and having that blow up, absolutely paved the runway in a big, bad way. So it felt like now's the time. If I could have gotten away with it as a second movie, I would have tried, but thankfully that didn't happen because I wasn't ready. So after Chasing Amy, it was like, look, there's going to be no time like this. And I was at a point in my career where it was a crossroads. I could have done a bunch of different things. I was in this deal with Universal to make a movie called Son of Fletch with Chevy Chase and Jason Lee and Joey Adams. And I had to let that go because I wanted to make Dogma. They're like, you got this or Dogma? And I was like, Dogma. And then Lorenzo Di Bonaventura, who was the producer later on of those Transformers movies, but back then he ran Warner Brothers. He invited me to his house for dinner. And after the dinner, he's like, at Warner Brothers, we have all these properties that aren't Batman and Superman, all these comic book characters that could be great movies and nobody's working on them. He's like, would you like to run a division here at Warner Brothers where all you do is go through all the DC comic books that aren't Batman and Superman and figure out stuff to make? So essentially he was like, would you like to be Kevin Feige before Kevin Feige?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But at DC. And I was so in love with Dogma and oh my God, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to have a chance. That I was like, that's flattering, but no, I want to do my thing. So I was ready and it felt like I'm never going to be in a better position than this. And since critically we're coming off of Chasing Amy, that's how we got Chris Rock. That's how we got Alan Rickman. Those are two of the cast that sought us out based on Chasing Amy. So it was the heat of the moment, to quote Asia, that really kind of allowed a Dogma to bloom. Any other time, it wouldn't have happened, man. My friend Malcolm is always saying, it's interesting. You, with the juice that you had, he's like, you really could have done anything. And you chose to make a religious movie with a bunch of famous people. And I was like, I know, it just felt like the right thing to do. So now, 25 or technically 26 years after we made it, it's, I've never regretted my decision, but it's been a lovely month of oh yeah, this is why I made Dogma, and not somebody else's thing. I would have enjoyed making Son of Fletch, but at the end of the day, that's somebody else's thing. I would have enjoyed running a division of DC that made comic book movies that I wasn't going to direct, but I was going to produce or something. but that wouldn't have been as cool as my own thing. And so, always die on the cross of originality, kids. Like there's always somebody more talented than you to make the movie that doesn't have your name on it. But only you can make the movie with your name on it, the one you dream about making. And thank God I did, man. It's aged incredibly well. And in a career, that's been going on for like 31 years, the longer you stick around, the less they're like, yay, they're like, ugh, Clerks 19, what the fuck? So it's nice to have one in the pocket that people still like.
Well, and one, like you said, that still has a message that I think that would resonate with people, whether they're religious or not. I think that, I'm a religious person, but I think that if you have if you're not okay with having your religion questioned or your ideology, are you really that faithful? Like you should be able to be questioned and think about things and be open to different ideas. I think that that's just part of the human condition. But there's a scene in this movie. Obviously, it's the open. It's when Bartleby and Loki are talking to each other in the airport. And Bartleby is discussing the moment when somebody gets off the plane and they see each other and they have this warm embrace, and all the other moments in life are erased. All the bad, sad, happy. The
moment they stole for Love Actually. Like if you ever watched Love Actually, at the beginning of the movie, there's a voiceover about people getting off planes and stuff like that. I remember being in the movie theater seeing that and being like, wait a second. But yeah,
isn't Rickman in that movie too? I think Rickman is in he in Love Actually? Yes. Okay, so look at that.
Richard Curtis owes me $15, man.
But to capture that moment, that's such a smart thing to capture. I'm just trying to figure out where did you find that?
I had just started traveling a bunch because of Clerks. Like, I traveled with my family when I was a kid, even though my old man worked for the post office. He wanted to go places. So every year we went on a vacation within the continental United States and stuff. My mom could stretch a buck. So when Clerks happened, I started traveling on behalf of the movie. And I'm not like a travel person. I don't really like to go anyplace. But it put me into airports more than I had been previously in my life. Like when I was a kid, maybe once a year, like you would go to the airport, to fly down to Florida or Virginia or something for a family vacation. But, throughout my late teens, early 20s, I wasn't flying around or anything. So because of Clerks, put me back into airports. And while you sit around airports, you're just looking around and observing. That was one of those things that like always touched me. You see people get off a plane, and you could back in those days wait at the gate. So as soon as somebody got off a plane, like you could be there to hug them. It was probably a scene that doesn't translate for a modern audience as well. Where the modern audience is just like, what's going on, man? How did they get so close to the gate? But yeah, it came from there. It came from like travel starting to happen more. And the script in 94 took like a massive jump with a rewrite post Pulp Fiction. I'd seen Pulp Fiction in Cannes and suddenly was like, oh my God, all things are possible. The tonal shifts in this movie are so damn dramatic. I was like, I want to do another draft of Dogma. And that's where Dogma got like more violent and closer to what everyone knows today.
Well, okay, so let me ask you that then. When you're coming off of Pulp Fiction, obviously I know for a minute I think you wanted Rufus to be Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, for more than a minute. Like when we were heading into casting the movie, like I just found recently for, we've been touring the movie. And so when we were at Smod Castle Cinemas, that was my movie theater, I went through the archives and we found some cool stuff to hang up in the theater for the screening, because the movie theater is one giant museum anyway and stuff. And so we found the deal memos that we sent out to like Alan, to Ben, to Matt. And it's like, Dear Patrick Whitesell, we'd like to offer your client, Alan Rickman, the role of Metatron for scale +10 and stuff. So it's nuts to see like the origins and how it began. Like that deal memo was dated August 1997.
Wow. So
it took another year before we would even get on set with the movie and stuff. And then another full year before the movie would come out. But wait, what was the question?
It was about Samuel. You were talking about Samuel.
So Sam Jackson was one of the deal memos.
Wow.
Before Chris Rock was involved. Like Chris Rock was somebody who sought us out because of Chasing Amy. He was a big fan of Chasing Amy. So he's like, I want to meet with the guy who made Chasing Amy and see what he's doing next. And I was like, well, we're making this movie called Dogma. And there's a part for Rufus that you would actually kill. So Rock lobbied for the part and absolutely destroyed. And this was Rock in ascendancy, right? It was just after his album and stand-up special Roll with the New, and suddenly he was getting respected worldwide as like this smart comedian and stuff. And so having him in the movie, like as much as, you know, Sam Jackson is an absolute legend even then, Chris brought something new and fresh to the table. And he was so passionate about the role that like you want to lean towards somebody who pursues the role because they're going to bring some magic to the table with them. And Chris did. I watched the movie every night for like a month on tour. And it's crazy how much more I appreciate everyone's performances now because they've aged so incredibly well. Like in the moment when we were making the movie, I was like, yeah, I guess that's it. And now we know what the movie is after a quarter of a century. And those performances are locked in stone at this point. And so spending every night with those performances, I could sit there and be like, wow, look at that. Like that, you know, Linda is another one that like, when we made the movie, like everyone else's performance is very showy and Linda's is very subtle and understated. And when I was a kid, I was like, oh man, I wish she was big like everybody else. Now I'm so glad that she plays a human character. She's the audience's only way in. Everyone else is an angel or a demon or a dead person. So she's Marilyn in the Munsters bunch. And her performance is so measured. You know, she's in a batshit stupid movie, you know, in terms of like the plot. These things don't happen to real people. But she truly makes it work, man. And she's like the emotional, soulful spine of the flick. And Chris, being our Rufus, you know, created a relationship that's lasted like 30 years. You know, I worked with Chris again and again and again. So it was the right choice, hands down. But truly the right choice based on his passion level alone.
Yeah, I mean, I love when his introduction is in the movie and he says something like, "Oh, you know Jesus," or "Christ, you know Jesus," and he's like, "Man, he owes me $12." You know,
yes. Except that the line is very specifically Chris Rock.
Yeah, a little bit different.
And he wrote that. My line in the script was like, "Knew him. I saw him naked," and so we got that take. And then Chris Rock did the one that's in the movie. And I remember, you know, everyone's cracking up. It was a real funny line. And then afterwards, I was like, "Oh man, that was great. I wish I could keep it in the movie." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Well, I can't just put that in. Like, what would the credits read? Script by Kevin Smith with one good joke by Chris Rock." And he was like, "I don't need the credit. Leave it in there." He's going, it got laughs, man. It's hysterical. And that was the beginning of me breaking down and allowing for ad-libbing. Prior to that, I was so dictatorial about the script. Like, you can only say what's in the script. Don't make shit up. But after that, I was like, I started letting more in. The next movie I did was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Chris was back for that. And I also had Will Ferrell. So suddenly I was like, well, I got people who are funnier than me, inarguably funnier than me. If they got funny ideas, take them. It ain't going to hurt your movie. It can only help.
Well, and you know what? You just led me into what my question was going to be, because when you watch any Quentin movie or Pulp Fiction and he talks about, I'll hire you to say the words that I wrote. Like, he's really big on his dialogue, and there's a very specific Quentin tone and rhythm to it. But same with yours. Same with yours, though. So that was the point where you said, "Oh, okay, ad lib, let's go for it." But you still want them to do it as it's written and then play with it, right?
Absolutely. Like with people like Justin Long, who's an excellent ad libber, Seth Rogen, even Ben. Ben is a pretty excellent ad libber as well. You get your take, you get what you need, the things that you wrote that you wanted to see in the movie, that you wanted to hear. And then you're like, "Hey man, go nuts, do whatever you want." And you give them one or two and let them go play. As long as I got the pieces that I need. Like, I direct, not really a director, and every critic will agree with me, but I'm more of an editor who, just happens to be in charge of directing the movie as well. So when I'm shooting and I'm just sitting on set collecting shots in my head going, I got that, I got that, I got that. All right, we got a scene and stuff. So once I have my limited pieces, because I shoot, as if the movie's a child's puzzle, 4 pieces, put it together. Once I have what I need, which is pretty early on, then I turn it over to the performer if they're into that sort of thing and be like, "Hey man, do whatever you want." And gold can absolutely come from it. Even if it's like one line or something like that, or one look, it's just like one more take to pull from and get left to their own devices. Like, I'm talking about some very talented kids who can ad lib within a script, so like they're still making your movie, not just saying funny things on set that's going to make the crew laugh. They're ad libbing within the story. So all of it's usable. that's like an absolute gift. It's like getting a free writer.
Right. Yeah. I can only imagine that it's like, oh, wow, they took this material that I have and they actually were able to elevate it in a way, or maybe, like you said, have a joke that I wouldn't have written, or you know.
It's like watching fan fiction of your material in real time.
Wow.
And like, since you know your script very well, and this is at a point in the movie's life where nobody really knows the script except you and the people working on the movie, to have somebody be so familiar with the script that they're generating new material and new storylines is thrilling for the person who created the storyline, because you're like, oh, that's funny. Like I never thought that the character could say that's a great act. So it's wonderful. It's watching that character flesh out beyond even what you wrote. And fun, because you like when I go to work with Justin Long and Seth and Ben, those are days where I know I'm going to laugh. I'm going to get free laughs. I mean, it ain't free because we're making a movie, but like I'm going to be doing my job, and in the process, like I know I'm going to laugh so hard that my sides are going to hurt or I'm going to cry, because those are three people who I know the script inside and out, and they're writers themselves. And so I know they're going to say something throughout the day or bring something to the table that is completely surprising to me and delightful at the same time. So I love going to work those days because I know I'm going to get what I need, but I know I'm just going to be like laughing my ass off. And like, why are we doing all this if not to have a good time? You know, it's like we could grow up and get real jobs and stuff, but we choose to make pretend for a living. And there's a reason. And it's not because the money's great, because money's not great in Kevin Smith movies and stuff. It's the joy, man. It's just like the making of joy, and the joy that's made for you as you watch your dream come true as this thing comes together. But if you have like really talented people working with you, then there's this other aspect where they're going to show you a movie that you weren't necessarily thinking about or planning for. One of my favorite things to say on a movie when somebody comes up with a good idea or whatever is like, oh my God, let's do that. I like your movie better than mine. And then we head in that direction.
Well, okay, let me ask you this then. So when in all your movies, you refer to other movies, like movies that you love. I mean, Fletch is a big one, obviously. Underhill was even in Jay and Silent Bob reboot. That was his
good catch.
His alias. So when do you make the decision? Like in Dogma, there's the scene where no ticket, right? That I think is the line you deliver, which is Indiana Jones' Last Crusade. Yeah, which is a great scene, great line in both movies. But when do you make that decision? Like, you know what, this is a good moment to refer to something that I love that made me love movies.
Usually when I'm sitting there writing it, and some people consider it lazy, but like, for years, 31 years now, pop culture references have been a big part of like what I do. My characters inhabit a world quite like mine where pop culture interests them or in many ways helps define how they think as well. So in the writing process, that stuff usually like pops in there, and it's not even like, and these are my favorite movies of all time. Like, in Dogma, there's a Karate Kid thing, wax on, wax off. And I like Karate Kid as much as the next guy, but it's not like Karate Kid defined my life. It was just a movie I enjoyed that I saw when I was a kid. And then this shit like plays. A lot of people saw Karate Kid, so having God in the third act do Mr. Miyagi's healing move, is you get some mileage out of it, and people like who get the joke are like, ha ha ha. And story-wise, it just helped. Even if you don't know Karate Kid, there's a bunch of people in the audience when it happened are just like, oh, I guess God just has magic powers or whatever the fuck. So nothing is lost. But periodically, you run into somebody who doesn't speak the same language as you, isn't as fluent. When we were making Dogma, there is a flat-out Karate Kid reference where Metatron it does wax on, wax off. And Alan wasn't familiar with the material. He didn't know Karate Kid. So in the script, he's got to go wax on, wax off. And acting comes down to a job of choices. And what makes an actor great is they make like the least obvious choice that makes you suspend the window of disbelief and believe the lie that tells the truth. That's how that magic works. So not being familiar with the line from a movie, Alan, being, classically trained actor, like performed it, like made a choice and delivered it in a way that like would have killed the joke because nobody would have understood that it was a reference to Karate Kid. So instead of, dropping a pop culture reference, Alan didn't know the movie Karate Kid, so he acted wax on, wax off in a, and it was a bold Alan Rickman choice. So I had to, from the sidelines, I was like, Alan, no, it's from a movie, man. It's from Karate Kid. You got to say it like this: wax on, wax off. And he does the slow turn to look at me, and then he goes, "Royally trained, Kevin." And then he goes back to work and stuff. So it helps if everybody's on the same pop culture page. I learned that on that movie as well.
I love that. And now look at this. All these years later, Dogma is in the theaters at the same time as a Karate Kid movie. Same time. Look
Isn't
at
that crazy? Even weirder is like Accountant 2 came out a couple weeks ago. The old Affleck and young Affleck are going to battle at the box office this week. It's like that Will Smith movie that nobody saw.
Yeah, well, for good reason. No, that was mean. It was an okay movie. Gemini Man. I think it was Gemini Man. I've heard you talk about obviously casting George Carlin and Matt and Ben and Chris and Alan, just like the embarrassment of riches. Linda, Salma Hayek at the time too is coming off of Desperado, I believe, at the time, and kind of really becoming an icon in her own right. From Dusk Till Dawn was around the same time, which is a movie that still
we followed From Dusk Till Dawn. They were like 95, because that's where I saw both her and Parks.
Okay.
And later on, I'd work with both of them and stuff. But Salma, we got to through Robert. Robert had called me up one day to be like, "Hey man, so I'm thinking about directing the Superman script that you wrote." And I was like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" So for a minute, Robert was going to direct my Superman script, but then he felt he owed Dimension, so he did The Faculty. So we were friendly at that point. And about a month before we went out to shoot Dogma, I called him. I cold called him, and I said, "Hey man, would you direct Dogma for me?" He goes, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I got this script and I love this script and it's so good, but I feel like I'm going to fuck it up. Like I'm not a great director." And he goes, "Kevin, you're a fine director." He's going, "Just don't put your actors against a wall and shoot them." He's like, "What you do is you always got two people stand next to each other and there's like a wall behind them." He's like, "Just put a window behind them. Put some depth in the frame behind them. You're fine. You can do this. Just add a little more depth to your shot." So he talked me off a ledge, and not only did he reveal Salma to us in Desperado, which I absolutely adored, but he also talked me down from walking away from Dogma based on my ineptitude. He was like, "You can handle this."
Wow. Yeah, I mean, she was, another, just like you said, I think you've characterized it as an embarrassment of riches, is Dogma, as far as the cast goes. And I know at one point, he who shall not be named, as you've referred to him before, Harvey Weinstein, called and was like, "Hey, maybe we could do a series. Maybe we could do Dogma 2. And it was kind of all a red herring or what have you. But is there a world where that is a possibility still, to where maybe, hey, I have an idea for how we could re-enter this world of Dogma 2?
Oh, yeah. The moment Alessandra Williams, she's the one that saved the movie. Yeah. When I met with her and she was talking about what we could do with the flick, she asked, like, "Would you ever think about doing a sequel?" And I was like, "Oh, my God, yes." Like, I remember when I began my career, I was like, "I'll never do a sequel because I got plenty of original ideas." But now you can watch Clerks 3 on home video. So when I was a kid and I made the movie and put it out, I was never planning on a sequel, but I would whimsy about, like, what would that look like? What would the story be and stuff? And so after all this time, to have her be like, "Would you want to keep going?" I was like, "Oh my God, yes." Like, I would love to play with these characters again. Now, when I made this movie, the kid who wrote it and directed it believed in everything that's on display. He was steeped in the faith. That movie is a defense of the faith. I'm not that person anymore. I don't have those same beliefs. Now I've got good ideas. So I can't sequelize that movie exactly the way that we made it the first time, because I don't have that same faith. So then the question is like, well, then what is it? And my way in has been that, like, the guy who wrote the first one believed in everything. And the guy who's writing the new one doesn't have those same beliefs. And that's kind of going to be the way in. When I wrote the first one, I was a kid with my whole life ahead of me, and now less life in front of me than behind me and stuff. So it'll inform a Dogma follow-up in a way that, the young Kevin Smith couldn't have conceived of when he started the journey all those years ago and stuff. But the older one gets, the more one starts realizing, oh, this will all end, won't it? And when one thinks about the end or thinks about their own demise, usually one of the next thoughts that follow is like, what are my thoughts on the afterlife? And that's when religious questions usually follow. So I'm hoping that while writing the script, I have a different religious journey than I was planning for. That'd be interesting. That'd be nice.
That would be interesting. I'm all ears for Dogma 2. Dogma back in theaters this week, 25th anniversary. Kevin Smith, I really appreciate your time. Final question for you. It's a little bit of a departure, but we're talking about sequels. You see I have a Back to the Future Part 3 poster behind me. Which is your favorite of the Back to the Future trilogy?
The first sets the tone and whatnot, and I enjoyed the other two for expanding the storyline, keeping the storyline going, building out the franchise. But I'll never forget sitting in a movie theater with me and my mom and dad and my friend Mike Bellicose went to see that movie. And not really being prepared, having seen like the commercials and the trailers and stuff. But that's an insanely well-written adventure movie. Like charming, what they call a 4-quadrant movie, just, perfection across the boards. There's a reason that they were able to keep going, make a couple sequels, and why it's still one of the most beloved franchises of all time. And we still haven't seen a remake of it because there's incredible affection for it. Just like you've never seen a Jaws remake, chances are in my lifetime, we're not going to see a Back to the Future remake with good reason, because the original still holds up today. So damn charming. So I love the first one. It's an absolute model in 3-act screenplay structure. Bob Gale was and is a genius, and Bob Zemeckis, man, like handled that all so goddamn beautifully. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, one of the greatest buddy team pair-ups in cinema history, and just so magical. Everything a movie should be. Take you to a place that could never exist, but the plausibility is so high based on even, the effects of the time, which were not CG and mostly practical and stuff. So just an absolutely whimsical, magical film, and the best that American cinema can be. It still holds up to this day.
It doesn't. It's on its 40th anniversary. Dogma, 25th anniversary, back in theaters. Kevin, this has been an honor and a privilege to talk to you this morning. Dogma, one of my favorite movies of all time. My favorite Kevin Smith movie. I'm so glad it's back in theaters.
Oh, my God. You rock. Thank you for the kind words this early. This is a heck of a way to wake up. I'm like, yeah.
Appreciate you, Kevin. I really do.
Thank you.